Tonight, the jockeying begins. House Republicans scramble to put a new leader in the Speaker's chair.
There's a lot of raw emotion in the conference.
And building the wall. The Biden administration plan to construct 20 miles of border wall in Texas as U.S. cities face an influx of migrants.
We need to go assess the situation.
Plus, the longest-serving woman senator in history. Californians say goodbye to one of their own. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The House may be in recess, but the race to replace Kevin McCarthy is running at full speed. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. There is plenty left on the agenda for lawmakers on Capitol Hill before the end of the year. But without a Speaker of the House, legislative work is at a standstill. And that is where we begin tonight. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka is on the Hill tonight. A chaotic week, to say the least. Matt, lawmakers are on recess, but the search for a Speaker continues. What's the latest?
Yeah, Jenna, let's start with some of the names we know are out there. Majority Leader Steve Scalise and Ohio Republican Jim Jordan, they both made it clear that they do want to be the next Speaker of the House. Now, for Steve Scalise, he's well-liked and his story is pretty well-known. He survived the congressional baseball shooting a couple years ago, and he recently just returned to the Capitol while still battling blood cancer. For Jim Jordan, well, he's probably got the support of a lot of those hard-right members of his own party. He's a member of the House Freedom Caucus himself. And again, there are other names out there, maybe even some that haven't been made clear yet. But no matter who ends up getting this job and becomes the next Speaker of the House, they do have a full agenda to get to as soon as they do get the job. There's all those spending bills that need to be taken care of after they just passed that CR with another November deadline looming. And one of the most divisive issues that they will be facing, Ukraine funding.
I'm against that. What I understand is at some point we're going to have to deal with this appropriation process in the right way. And we're going to try to do that in the next, what are we down to, 41 days. The most pressing issue on Americans' minds is not Ukraine. It is the border situation and it's crime on the streets. And everybody knows that. So let's address those. If the Senate wants to send us something on other issues, that's their prerogative.
Now, of course, funding Ukraine is one of the biggest asks from the White House, and President Joe Biden recently admitted that all of the House turmoil has worried him.
It does worry me, but I know there are a majority of members of the House and Senate in both parties who have said that they support funding Ukraine. With your, I'm going to be announcing very shortly a major speech I'm going to make on this issue, and why it's critically important for the United States and our allies that we keep our commitment. We can support Ukraine in the next tranche that we need, and there is another means by which we may be able to find funding for that, but I'm not going to get into that now.
Yeah, Matt, the situation was brought upon by a small number of Republicans. How are these Republicans now reacting to these members?
Well, Jenna, Matt Gaetz is certainly getting the brunt of a lot of this ire. The Florida Republican brought that motion to vacate to the floor, and now some of Kevin McCarthy's closest allies are raking Gaetz over the coals for getting the House to this point.
There's a lot of raw emotion in the conference. I think that they made the right decision by pressing pause for a minute. I think if we stayed in the room last night, and I'm not exaggerating, I think it probably would have devolved into a little bit of physical altercation in there. People are mad right now, and justifiably so. Let's think for just a minute about what happened last night. Matt Gaetz just got schooled by AOC and others. He was totally manipulated into doing this.
Now, of course, next up is actually picking a new speaker and picking a candidate to be the nominee for the next speaker. There will be a candidate forum for Republicans on Tuesday. Democrats have already announced they're going to nominate Hakeem Jeffries, but they will likely not get any Republican votes, so that won't go anywhere. So the Republicans need to pick somebody. But as if all of this wasn't enough, to just add one more wrinkle to this, former President Donald Trump has reportedly indicated that he will visit the Capitol early next week, and he could be open to pitching himself as the next Speaker of the House. So obviously, something to keep our eye on. Jenna?
All right. Wild times. Matt Gutka on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Matt. Well, some Republicans say ending Kevin McCarthy's term as Speaker is a way to hold GOP leaders accountable. Congresswoman Victoria Spartz is one of them. The Indiana Republican says she wants fresh leadership. She spoke with Washington correspondent Hillary Powell earlier today.
Thank you so much for joining me, Representative Spartz. You know, such a busy week, in Indiana, across the nation. And I just wanted to get your thoughts. Mr. McCarthy was ousted. What were your initial thoughts when all of this happened?
So I was willing to keep him, more as a speaker, but some of my other colleagues decided otherwise. And that's what democracy is. We don't have kings and queens. No speaker is irreplaceable, and we cannot have a top-down governing. Democracy with representation, we all represent the same amount of people, and all of us have to be able to deliberate.
You said you wanted to give him one more chance. What about Gates? Does he deserve another chance? Are you in favor of expelling Gates if it comes to that? Is he safe from a motion?
If you believe in principle, you have to defend the principle. And he didn't violate any rules. It took more than one, right? He had to do the motion, and I guess he had enough people that felt the same way. And that was really what democratic process is about. So I think going and do witch hunts and go after that, I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's helpful. That's what it is. You become a leader and you pay the price, you pay a picture on the wall, you go into all of these things, and you have to take, face the consequences, but people shouldn't be punished for something that they do that any of us could.
Well, now on to the search for a new speaker. And do you feel like there's anyone that you have confidence in your conference that could deliver on some of those issues about the debt limit, border security, appropriations?
Well, listen, I like Thomas Massey, but he's not running. So, but I'll be open-minded with other candidates. I mean, we're not going to get a perfect one, right? We all have strengths and weaknesses. From people that are running, I'm open-minded to both leading candidates. I think Congressman Jordan and Congressman Scalise, they're good-hearted people. That's my first number one. Condition that the people have a good heart and really good soul. That is, if you don't have that care inside, I am not going to. If your opportunists just want to try a job and picture on the wall, I cannot stand it. These people, both of them do have good hearts and good intention for the people. But then I'll have to look at the capabilities and what's going to be happening. And I think a lot of members will be looking the same way, and we'll have to figure it out. But I don't think until we figure out 218, we should do deliberation, whatever it takes, not go and do the circuses on the floor. That's unhealthy and not helpful.
Speaking of heart, you brought your heart into the matter, speaking that to your children, and that you love spending time with them, and that you won't settle for anything less than talking about the debt commission. Will you resign if it's not brought to the table in a way that you see fit?
Your children is still your primary responsibility. And I have great children and great husband, but ultimately I'm still a mother, so I need to decide. I'm willing to do something good and help Republicans, so it will depend who's next leader, what is the vision, what we can accomplish, and I will make that decision then. But I wanted to communicate just to my voters so they know what I'm working and what is important, and maybe raise the awareness.
Well, to round us out, will you run for re-election next year?
It's a great one, a huge responsibility, but it's also sacrifice. And I have children still in high school, so I might need to regroup and then think about something else when they get out of high school.
So when will you know?
A lot of things happened that I probably didn't anticipate, but that maybe if I feel that is important, I'll do it. But only I feel it's important and brings some value. Otherwise, I don't need to do presentations here.
Representative Spartz of Indiana, thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you, Hillary. Well, in other news tonight, a White House 180. The administration announcing today it will build 20 new miles of border wall in Texas. Mark Martin has more on that.
The Biden administration is using sweeping executive powers to waive more than 24 federal laws, allowing construction of up to 20 miles of border wall in an area of South Texas, where 245,000 migrants have crossed this year alone. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said there is presently an acute and immediate need to construct physical barriers and roads in the vicinity of the United States in order to prevent unlawful entries. It's a reversal, of course, from the president's 2021 proclamation ending all border wall construction. In the 2020 campaign, he said, "There will not be another foot of wall constructed in my administration." But a tidal wave of migrant crossings has national Democrats calling for the president to take action. Border Patrol encountered more than 200,000 migrants in September alone, the highest number of encounters so far this year. It's a crisis felt across the country as busloads of migrants are arriving in major cities.
We're going to tell them that coming to New York doesn't mean you're going to stay in a 5-star hotel. It doesn't mean that the mere fact you come here, you automatically are going to be allowed to work.
New York Mayor Eric Adams now is on a 4-day trip to South and Central America. He says his city can't accommodate the 120,000 migrants who've arrived in recent months. The number of buses filled with asylum seekers has nearly tripled in recent days. Adams isn't the only mayor speaking out.
We need to go assess the situation. Just like our team has gone to D.C., we need better coordination.
Chicago's mayor now plans to visit the border as his city is expecting as many as 24 more buses from Texas. And Illinois' governor accusing the federal government of a lack of intervention and coordination. Meanwhile, environmental advocates say they're shocked the Democratic administration made the decision to resume building the wall. They're upset the barriers will travel through public lands where endangered plants and species live. Mark Martin, CBN News.
Thank you, Mark. And here with us now, David Beer, Associate Director of Immigration Studies at the Cato Institute. David, welcome. So a stunning reversal from this administration. Very recently, President Biden told reporters walls don't work. What do you make of today's announcement?
It's a bizarre situation. On the one hand, the Department of Homeland Security is out there saying there's an immediate need for this wall. That's a reversal for this administration. And on the other hand, the President of the United States says there's no need for the wall. So there's a bit of confusion in terms of the messaging, and actual implementation of this will be up to the department, and they want to build it as fast as they can. So they're waiving about 20 laws in order to expedite the construction of this part of the wall that the Trump administration was planning on building.
Yeah. David, what's your take about this wall? How effective do you think it will be? And how effective do you think it will be?
No more effective than any of the other walls that were built under the Trump administration. We got 500 miles of border wall down there, and it's doing a whole lot of nothing. It redirects people to other locations. It changes how people come. It makes people climb over the wall. We've seen a lot of people fall off the wall and end up in hospitals in the United States. That's not great for border communities. So I don't support a border wall, especially when it's being built by taking private property away from private property owners in order to construct this border wall. So there are some downsides for border residents, and there's not much upside because we know this administration is operating with hundreds of miles of border wall. And as long as there's no way for people to come in legally and lawfully and orderly way, then they're going to continue to come illegally. And it's just going to be another $1 billion down the drain for really a project that the Trump administration started because the former president bragged that he would build a wall across the border.
Yeah. David, let me ask you this. Do you think the White House would ever consider bringing back the Remain in Mexico policy put in place by the previous administration? For our viewers, it essentially made asylum seekers await their hearings in Mexico rather than the United States. And do you think that could be a possible solution to this multi-pronged problem?
I certainly think that they would consider it. We've seen evidence that they were considering it last year. It was rejected. They've come up with a lot of different programs with Mexico, and I would not be surprised at all to see a resurrection of that particular policy, or maybe just a resurrection in another form.
Yeah. Well, Mexico is our biggest trading partner, so we definitely have leverage with Mexico. We'll see what happens. David Beer with the Cato Institute. Thank you, David. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Lawmakers make their way to California. Coming up, the life and legacy of the longest-serving woman senator in U.S. history. Welcome back. Senator Diane Feinstein has been laid to rest. Prior to today's funeral, the California Democrat lay in state in San Francisco's City Hall, a place where she once served as mayor. After battling declining health, Feinstein passed away last week at the age of 90. She served more than 30 years in the Senate. President Biden reflecting on her landmark career.
She was a historic figure, trailblazer for women, and a great friend. Diane made her mark on everything from national security to the environment, to gun safety, to protecting civil liberties. The country's going to miss her dearly, and so will Jill and I.
Senator Feinstein's funeral was originally open to the public, but officials had to change that due to security concerns. The largest healthcare strike in U.S. history is underway. Tens of thousands of Kaiser Permanente workers across multiple states took to picket lines Wednesday, walking off jobs at more than 30 hospitals nationwide. Some 75,000 picketers asking for better wages and more staff. Doctors are not participating in the strike, and Kaiser hospitals are remaining open. But officials warn a three-day strike could cause delays at Kaiser facilities, which serve nearly 13 million Americans. Up next, in Israel, countries moving to relocate their embassies to Jerusalem. What it means for the Middle East. Welcome back as we turn now to the prospect of peace in the Middle East. 20 Senate Democrats outlining conditions for a peaceful relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia, calling for an Israeli commitment not to annex parts of the West Bank and to allow Palestinian expansion. The senators are urging the president to consider Saudi human rights violations and expressing concern over a possible Saudi civil nuclear program. Maryland Democrat Chris Van Hollen told reporters he believes a defense deal between the U.S., Israel, and Saudi Arabia could be, quote, the last chance to salvage the possibility of a two-state solution. While normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia would be historic, it's just one part of a growing global acceptance of the Jewish state. Another example of that was on full display recently at the UN General Assembly. The move of many nations to relocate their embassies to Jerusalem. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reports.
At the United Nations, Prime Minister Netanyahu met with the President of the Republic of Congo, signaling another embassy move.
We agreed that Israel will open an embassy in Kinshasa and Congo will move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. These are two good announcements. And I think they reflect our common desire to upgrade our relations.
Then came Paraguay.
Paraguay will reopen and will put the embassy where it belongs, in the city of Jerusalem. Our history brought us together, the present brings us together, but the future will have us more closer than we've been never before.
Before his U.S. trip, Papua New Guinea became the 5th country and first Asian Pacific nation to announce such a move.
Many nations choose not to open their embassies in Jerusalem, but we made the conscious choice. This has been the universal capital of the nation and people of Israel. For us to call ourselves Christian, paying respect to God will not be complete without recognizing that Jerusalem is the universal capital of the people and nation of Israel.
And as you correctly said, it's been our capital for the last 3,000 years. This is where so much of our heritage emerged from. This is where our values were forged. This is where our prophets prophesied. This is where so many of the eternal values that we hold dear were created and disseminated to the people of Israel and from there to all humanity.
Prime Minister Marape invited Pastor Joseph Walters to represent his country's Christian community.
Already, the people are excited, especially the Christian populace is so excited that our government has made that move and stand. And we believe that with our connections to Israel, the continued friendship we have, and the building of the embassy will bring blessings to us, as promised by God in Genesis 12:2-3 to Father Abraham.
Pastor Walters expects the move will lead to economic benefits.
Big time for Papua New Guinea, economic, technology, health, power supplies, and whatever Israel can offer in the agriculture sector. We're all excited and looking forward to that.
Thomas Sandel of the European Coalition for Israel feels it's clear why nations should move their embassies to Jerusalem.
I would say, as a matter of protocol, no other nation would have their capital, the location of their capital questioned. I mean, it's a given. It's up to the Israelis to decide what is the capital of the Jewish state, and then for other countries to follow diplomatic protocol and just accept it and move their embassy to Jerusalem in this case, to just recognize the importance of Jerusalem that goes back thousands of years.
Some believe after 3,000 years, these embassy moves represent a move to give the capital city of Jerusalem the respect it deserves. And for Papua New Guinea and some other nations, a generational shift in Christian Zionism indicates a factor where nations may realize the importance of aligning themselves with prophecy regarding Jerusalem. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Still ahead, taking the beauty of fall to new heights. Next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a bird's eye view of fall foliage, thanks to a big balloon and lots of hot air. One of Vermont's most popular tourist attractions, called Above Reality Hot Air Balloon Rides, is taking off this fall. Customers coming from all over the world to experience the vibrant season in a whole new way. From the hot air balloon basket, riders can watch the changing trees, mountain views, and all kinds of wildlife. While it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, they say no two rides are ever the same. And it is the most wonderful time of the year. That's going to do it for Faith Nation. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a great evening. Take care.